Record. Great. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us from across Africa. Happy that you are able to join us once again for this monthly webinar series. We started these in January, and we've had a couple of sessions. This webinar series is meant to provide an opportunities for professional development for association executives here in Africa, but also those that are joining us from across the world. This month, we want to talk about AI, artificial intelligence. There has been a craze since ChatGPT hit the airwaves. I think we've seen a lot of interest on the AI. Not because AI wasn't a topic before, it was there before, but I think ChatGPT has been able to bring to fore, just conversation around what AI can do. And associations are not left behind. We are beginning to see interest in how we can apply AI in managing our associations. And it's for this reason that we have asked Andy Steggles, who is a CEO and founder of Insightguide, to come and share with us a little bit more information around how AI can be used in associations. And just briefly by way of introduction, Andy Steggles, as I've said, is a CEO and founder of Insightguide, and which is an AI-enhanced platform that is designed to help associations grow their non-dues revenue while also improving their member engagement. And prior to Insightguide, he co-founded Higher Logic and also served as the head of technology for 10 years at the Risk and Insurance Management Society. Andy is also an alumni of the Harvard Business School. So Andy will be sharing with us just some snippets around AI and how you can use them. And so without further ado, Andy, may I take this opportunity to welcome you to this session, share with us some of the snippets, and we'll be happy to be able to engage with you. Over to you, and let's make this an interactive session.
All right, brilliant. Thanks, Nicanor. And yeah, so interactive is kind of a key point on this. So I'll be looking for examples and just to play around and do stuff with you. Think of like business problems that you have as I'm talking through some of the use cases, and we'll try and just do some, if we have time, live. So, yeah, thanks for the warm introduction. First thing I want to do is just start off talking about like just AI in general, right? So without doubt, it's possibly the most disruptive technology since the last major revolution, which is the internet. But if you think about the history of every revolution, like going back to the Industrial Revolution, in the past, it's always focused on disrupting blue-collared workers. This is different. This is, in my opinion, this is the first revolution that's focused, that has the potential to disrupt and is disrupting white-collared workers, the more professional level workers. And the main reason for that is because, the major disruptions in the past have focused on just automating tasks, right? Very logically driven, right? We take these 5 tasks and now we systematize it and so on. And then now it goes from manufacturing to back to the Industrial Revolution when you have machine parts and whatnot, to the internet where we're taking technology and software and whatnot. The big difference in this is that we've gone from the automating left brain stuff to also including right brain stuff. So AI is disruptive because it now has the ability to be creative. And in terms of, when you look at the potential of that, think about this as an example. NetDragon Websoft, which is a Hong Kong-based online gaming firm, they've got 2.1 billion in annual revenue. And so they hired a new CEO to helm its flagship subsidiary, Tang Yu. This was in August 22. His typical responsibility is that the difference with this CEO, she worked 24/7, she didn't sleep, and was compensated $0 a year. So, you guessed it, they actually appointed an AI to be their CEO. Right. So when I say it has the potential to displace white-collared workers, then that's it. I mean, it's at all levels. However, certain types of that's obviously a bit of an anomaly, and it's not going to happen very often. But but you get the idea that certain types of jobs, which I'll go through now, are much more likely to be disrupted in some shape or form. So again, welcome everybody. My name's Andy Steggles. We had a couple of late joiners with us. My new company, Insightguide, it's designed as a marketplace for associations, right, where members can engage with suppliers, right, and then suppliers get leads, and the association, as a result, gets non-dues revenue. My former company, which you may have heard of, is called Higher Logic. I created that after serving as the CIO for the Risk and Insurance Management Society for 10 years. So I'm from the association side. As an association exec, I moved to the dark side, created a software company, and after I exited out of that a few years ago, I created Insightguide, which has recently launched. So just a little bit of background. I'm going to try and, there's a lot here today in the agenda. I'm going to cover as much as we can, but I just ask you to be flexible with the agenda based on the questions and where the discussion goes, because I want really you guys to help guide me where the areas that are more interesting for you. So start off with, what is artificial intelligence, right? It's been around for a while. There's just been different levels of it. Most of it has really been around smart automation, but recently we've seen the kickoff of last year ChatGPT, that's now gone through a couple of evolutions, and we're on version 4. Version 4 is made from a much bigger data model, right? And so it's arguably much more accurate. However, both versions have got a core limitation where they're cut off from, like, they've been fed with the world's data on the internet, right? Filtered down in various ways. But the cutoff is November 21, right? So it hasn't indexed anything or taken anything into account after that date. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you want to ask it a question about some recent topic, it's not going to know that. But AI, it has the ability to now to think and act like a person, right? It also has, and this was only recently discovered, something called theory of mind, which in our world is called strategic thinking. And as part of that, this was an emergent capability. It wasn't programmed with theory of mind, it developed theory of mind. And when you look at the equivalent age level of its strategic thinking ability, and this is just ChatGPT as an example, 2019, the chart in the top right here, you'll see it kind of, let me just kind of zoom in. You can see kind of it started an exponential curve, right? And so think of the AI as like a baby. When a baby is born, it knows nothing. It has 0 world experience. And then as it grows up, it starts to learn things, right? You've got your academic things that it's learned, but then it's got its world experience, right? And AI, ChatGPT, is very similar in the sense that, the more data it consumes, the more, and it processes, and it goes through these epochs, these iterations, where it can just go through the data, several times, and and then figure out new correlations and whatnot. It's evolved from really what was 2020 to 2022, from a baby to a 9-year-old. Right now, I'd say I haven't seen the latest data yet, but I'd imagine by the end of this year, at least, it will probably be a mature adult, right, in terms of its strategic thinking capability. Similarly, it's also developed new capabilities related to math and other things. The Persian example was one I found pretty interesting. ChatGPT was only ever trained in English. And yet suddenly, like, somebody discovered that it it taught itself Persian and was able to converse fluently, in different languages. So just an example of how it's teaching itself and learning from the data that it's fed. In terms of the adoption, I mean, in the past, it's funny, Uber, I remember a few years back, Uber, reached 100 million users in 70 months, which was like just mind blowing. And then of course, each one of these kind of got, improved upon. Twitter took 9 months to be, TikTok took 9 months to reach 100 million. ChatGPT, it took just 2 months to reach 100 million users. It's mind blowing. So, ChatGPT is released in December 22. I mentioned about the knowledge limit. It's trained on what we call LLMs, or large language models. It's part of a suite of tools from a company called OpenAI. You may have heard Elon Musk was one of the investors. Well, Microsoft bought a big chunk of it, and so now it's really their baby. Capable of human-like text, and it can be used for many things. And I'm going to give you a lot of examples in the rest of this webinar. Code generation is one, right? Programmers, right? Now programmers are being displaced. Again, white-collar workers. And I assume Africa use that term, white-collar workers. It might be an Americanism or Europe, but either way, hopefully you know what I mean. It can summarize. You could give it a huge article and say, give me a one paragraph summary, and it will do it beautifully. I use that personally quite a bit, especially when I've got a ton of articles to read or whatnot. And it can have a conversation. You can just ask it random questions. You could it can be creative. It can you can ask it to write you a prayer, right, and it will do so. I mean, it's just you just have to play around with it, and the more people play around with it, the more interesting use cases we start to see. Oh yeah, and I did put a link, and the slides will be sent to you all afterwards. I'll send it as a PDF, and in it there's a bunch of notes as well that might be useful. But the links in the slides, for example, here there's a quick tutorial. I definitely recommend doing that. It's actually not that easy to find when you just go to the site. So I've put a direct link to it there for you to play around with. So just a couple of bits of information about the background process, right, of AI. ChatGPT itself, just for those of you who are interested, it works on 4-character basis. So it takes every 4 characters you put into it, it what we call tokenizes it, turns it into a token, which is 4 numbers, right? And the numbers, right, statistically, it can figure out what the next set of 4 numbers is going to be, right? And that's kind of how it works. Everything it does, it actually converts to numbers and uses numbers to figure it out, and then converts it back. So of course you don't see any of that. It's just kind of behind the scenes how the system works. However, it is relevant because if ever you use the API, like the web connection, so if you've got a website and you want it to work directly with ChatGPT, you'll get charged based on the number of tokens that you use. And 1 token is 4 characters, right? And 4 characters or 0.75 words on average. And the example they give is Shakespeare. The complete works of Shakespeare is 900,000 words, which is 1.2 million tokens. And to index all of that, or for it to consume and digest all of that, would be about $2,500, right, US dollars. And there are different AI engines out there from OpenAI, and some of them are better at certain things than others. So you'd pick and choose which one you want to use. All right, so some of the known limitations of this, one is sometimes it's just blatantly wrong, right? It comes up with, we call it alternative facts or incorrect facts. And then of course there's a lot of potential risks with AI, such as if it's been trained on the world's data, with the problem of course with that is there's a lot of bad information on the world's data, right, on the internet. There's a lot of toxic, negative bias, racism and all that sort of stuff, and so that's part of its training. Now, the different platforms are trying to do things to mitigate the risk of it producing results that are biased in some way or have any of these negative factors, but it's just something you should keep in mind when you use it, right? Depending on the use case. Some cases it won't matter because it's clearly, like, if you're asking it a scientific question or a mathematical question, but if you ask it to write an article, you should always review what it produces. And when it does, there's actually, I don't know if you've heard of, there was a recent article in the New York Times about an attorney, a lawyer, that was asked to represent a guy that got hit by a cart on an airplane and damaged his knee. So he wanted to sue the airline. Well, the lawyer submitted the whole lawsuit, and the defense for the airline, they went through it and they saw all of these cases that had been cited in the lawsuit, that had set a precedent. And they looked them up and they couldn't find them. And finally, they went back to the judge and was like, "Judge, like, we can't find any of these cases. We looked everywhere." So he went to the attorney and said, "You need to point where these cases are." And embarrassing, the attorney came back and was like, "So sorry. I asked ChatGPT to write the brief for me, and it included them. But I did ask it at the end, 'Are you sure these are correct?' And it said yes." Anyway, it hit the New York Times and kind of went a little bit viral. But the point is, it created these perfect case studies. It cited these perfect cases that correlated with the lawsuit that they were filing, but it was just completely fictional. And the term for this is called hallucinations. And so AI has it can hallucinate, and so you have to just keep that in mind. And you can ask it to validate it and it'll say yes, but it could be wrong. So you always have to check whatever it's giving you. Marketing, customer service, community management, membership, these are all areas where AI can do very well and help you out. For those of you who might be more technically savvy, there is, and if you want to use, there's OpenAI has a thing called their playground. And it's for testing things that you might do with an API. I actually was, I created what we call a fine-tuned language model, which is where you take ChatGPT and then you extend it based on a very specific set of data that you've created to train it on a very specific thing, right? And this is an area I think has tremendous application for associations. Associations have a ton of, often have a ton of a body of knowledge that they own and they authored collectively with their members. And therefore, there's an opportunity to create a fine-tuned large language model that has access to this, unique data that it otherwise wouldn't have access to. So you can see here, I created the Da Vinci in the bottom right corner there. Oops. The Da Vinci Insight Guide. Da Vinci is the model that I used, and the Insight Guide was a fine-tuned model. Oops, sorry. Let me just kind of go back. Jumps ahead. But anyway, so there's a link in there to go if you're more interested in that. That's a little more on the technical side, so I'm kind of going to back off a little bit. I want to go to a couple of use cases, and for those who've joined late, if you have any questions along the way, just feel free to type them in or just come off mute and jump in and ask. It's a small enough group, I think it's fine to do that. So moderation, actually ChatGPT in their own help center use moderation as a great example of what ChatGPT can do. So if you have manual moderation of something at the moment, it's a good use for it, how you can automate that, simple use. Tagging, categorization, I use that all the time with what I do, and I'll show you an example in a little bit. Speech to text, the fine-tuning large language models that I mentioned, and the main thing I wanted to hit here is, now I noticed we have Erica from the South African Heart Association. Let's say that in Erica's case, there's a lot of peer-reviewed journals, right? And or let's say if you work for an engineering organization and you've got a lot of technical specifications that you produce, like that's a great example of where you could create a fine-tuned large language model relatively inexpensively And then we're looking in the future where, and I've already spoke to some associations about this, and this is nothing Insightguide would do ourselves, but it's an area that we're involved in. But you could create a new member benefit, or maybe an elevated level of membership where you get access to a fine-tuned AI focus on your industry for an extra price, and maybe you get a certain amount of tokens that you can use on a monthly basis, right? Because you would have to pay, and so you want to cover those costs and maybe make some money on it. So there's all kinds of opportunities around that, and I think we'll see more emerge in the near future. So having said all that, how do you actually use this stuff, right? So when you go to openai.com, it's actually not as easy as you would think to find. So I've put the specific instructions to do this. You go to products, GPT-4, and then try on ChatGPT. I would recommend you try the paid version. It's much less buggy. You can cancel at any time. It's just $20 a month. But just try it for a month or two, and then if you don't see the immediate value, that $20 should be a no-brainer. But if you don't see that value, you just cancel it. But when you first start messing around with it, you don't want to be like, often you get hit with bugs and things like that, or the server's too busy, or that sort of things. There is, if you use the Edge browser, Microsoft Edge browser. Keep in mind that Microsoft owns a lot of the company. So if you go to the Edge browser and go to the three little dots in the top right corner and come down to apps, there's a desktop app that you can use with Windows. And in my opinion, it's much better than the web browser version, right? So I would install that anyway. Then you can just have it as an icon on your desktop and use anytime. The API I mentioned. And then the other thing is, there's a term that you may or may not have heard called prompt engineering. So it's kind of the next evolution of software engineering. Software engineers, they do some hard coding, and it's complicated. Prompt engineering is tomorrow's software engineering. It's really about taking a problem, breaking it down into smaller chunks in a way that AI can understand. Right? You just type what you want it to do. And by becoming a great prompt engineer, that's how you become great at using AI, right? And I'm going to give you some specific examples and a couple of tasks for you to try as to get used to that. But think of chat as more like a personal assistant, because the big difference with chat is that the difference between chat and a search engine, when you type something into a search engine, you get the results, but they're not quite right. So you change the search, you end up rewriting the whole thing, whatever you're searching for, and researching, because it doesn't take into account what you searched before, right? With AI, it's different. With ChatGPT, it remembers the entire conversation and takes everything into account. You could have given it an instruction up here. You could have told it 10 more things with some back and forth conversation, and then 10, 20 conversation points down, you may tell it to do something. It's still going to remember all of the other things you've told it and instructed it, right? So in the same way, if you have a personal assistant, you kind of train that assistant to understand how to work with you, how to work with each other. Then if you got a new assistant, you'd have to start all over again. Well, with ChatGPT, you kind of do the same thing, where you create a thread, a conversation that will last forever. But if you start a new conversation, it won't have any knowledge about the other conversation, right? And I'll show you some examples. Some of the things you need to focus on when you do prompt ChatGPT is clarity. Clearly defined prompts give you much better results. So in that case, just think about how you can be very specific, and again, break it down into smaller chunks. You want it to tell it to act as, right? So act as a professor of, information technology. You've 20 years coding experience. You're focused on the association industry, and anything you write is targeted towards membership professionals, right? Which takes you to the next thing, is the target group. So you have to tell it what the audience is that you're giving it this task for. So the audience is association professionals, usually in the membership department. You can be as specific as you wish. What level they are, how much experience, you kind of define the persona. And then the format, well, how do you want it, right? I want it in a table, I want it in a grid or a table format, or I want it in a markdown format or whatnot. And then, when you're messing around with this, start simple. Just give it a simple command initially, play around with it, and then get more complex. So another nice little tip is at the end of your prompt, you can ask it, is there anything else it needs in order to give you the best result? And it will tell you, oh yeah, well, if you can tell me the sort of person you're looking for in this scenario or whatnot. But if you just ask it, it will give you an idea. All right, so here's an example of chain prompting. Chained prompting, which is chain of thought prompting, is where you ask, you set the stage, you tell it to act as, in this case, I've said act as an association recruiter for a membership manager position, write a 500-word article on membership management. First, give me an active, compelling outline that consists of a headline, teaser, and several subheadings. And the format is Markdown, right? So that's what I've initially set the stage. It gives me the response. And then I'm telling it, all right, now write 5 key messages. Right, so in this example, and I wonder if I could actually, let me just pull it up. It might be better if I just start a new chat. Right, so this is ChatGPT, the Windows desktop version, the one I'd recommend you all use. You've got 3.5 or 4. 4 is a better one. It's just a bit slower. Right, so because it's made up of a much wider, much broader set of knowledge, right? So in this case, I'm going to act as an.
Andy, are you displaying something for us?
Oh, you can't see it. Okay, sorry. I must be sharing my slide, not my screen. Let me just make sure I'm. Let me reshare. Share my screen. Screen option is, I'm not seeing it. Let me just share the ChatGPT thing. Okay, so in this case, I'm acting as an association recruiter for a membership manager position. Write a 500-word article on, what do we want an article on? Article on how AI will impact, let's be really specific. I'm going to say African associations. I don't know if that's going to make a difference, but we can try it. African based associations. And I'm going to change the act as a recruiter for a membership management. Actually, I'm going to say, instead of a recruiter, because if I'm writing an article, I'm just going to say you're an association professional with 25 years experience. You work in the membership departments for a large association. For a large African-based association. Right, a 500-word article on how AI will impact African-based associations. Right, so that's the, I could ask it, is there anything else you need to know? But I'm just going to say, oops. First, give me 5 bullet points on what the article will be about. Okay, so I'm actually going to, instead of saying write 500-word article, actually I'm just going to leave it like that and hit go, just see what it does. So now it's giving me the bullet points. Love it. The future of African associations, blending tradition with technology. So let's go ahead and creating this article. right? So I'm going to stop generating that. And that's another thing to know. You can click on stop generating once you start seeing the result, and you can come back and then edit the original quest, because the moment it starts generating, you're like, oh no, I forgot to do this. Just stop it, go back, edit, and then do it again. So I'm going to cancel this, and I'm just going to do a new chat, but this time I'm going to use the chat GPT 3.5. Paste in the exact same thing, and you see how much faster it is. Also, it didn't just give me the 5 bullet points. It actually is kind of writing an article. Like it didn't do exactly what I said. So I'm going to say regenerate the response. So it's going to think about it again, and it may or may not do it differently. I'm going to stop because it still hasn't given me the, I'm going to say it's the same. I'm going to regenerate it again. And sometimes if you regenerate a few times, it will actually, all right, so it still hasn't done it. Just give me the bullet points. So now you can see I haven't had to rewrite the whole thing. I'm just telling it to, hey, change what you're doing to take this into account. Just give me the bullet points. It's like, certainly, here are 5 bullet points, right? And again, it's super quick, but the other one was actually a bit smarter, right? So the only thing about the GPT-4 is that it gives you a limit on how many times in a 24-hour period you can use it. The 3.5 doesn't. So here's some examples of just how I use it on a day-to-day basis. So keep in mind that Insightguide is a directory of suppliers, right? When we add all the suppliers, when we launch a new company, they want to know, like, we want a completed profiles of all the suppliers. And so when we do this, if I just kind of scroll up on this example, this is for the Association of Independent School Professionals. So here, at the beginning of this prompt, you work as an independent school and are putting together a directory of suppliers for similar schools. You're an expert in marketing communications. You need to write a 200-word description for each of the following schools in a compelling and engaging manner, right? And all I've given it is the organization ID, name, and web address, right? So, and then at the end, after giving it a few sample, I just pasted from a spreadsheet a few sample ones. There's no comma or anything like that in between them. It kind of figures it out. I then said output in a table format with a column for the ID, supplier name, and description. And in the description, blah, blah, blah. And then I've told it put header tags around the headings and so on. And then of course it gave me that exact thing, a table format, organization ID, supplier, and then description. I'm like, that's good. I only gave it a few of them just to see how it would do. Then I said, now continue with these, right? And I pasted a ton of them in. After I did all that, let me just I then needed to categorize them. And so, to categorize them, after I did that, I had about 200 or something I needed to do. Can you imagine how much time this would have taken, doing it manually? All right. So then I said, you're an expert admissions professional. I just kind of reminded it, you have to decide which industry categories are most relevant to the long list of supplier companies. The following are the industry categories and the respective IDs. So gave it a whole list of categories. And then I said, hey, choose the top 3 categories and put them in a table format. It output the result, but it wasn't in a table format. So I had to stop it and then say, hey, output the results in a table format again. I remember this is using 3.5 because of the volume I was doing and the speed of which I wanted it done. And now it's giving me the idea of the company and the 3 categories in priority order. So just to give you an idea of kind of how you can use this stuff, let me go back to the PowerPoint example. Oh. There we go. All right. So anyway, that kind of hopefully it will give you a few ideas. In the in the example in the slide, you can see kind of the chain prompting, how chain of thought. I've asked it to do something, it's given me, now asked it to do something, you know, a little bit more, and again, you've taken a small task and you're slowly expanding it to do a lot of more complex things. I love this is a great way of playing around with the act as. So try getting it when you've got something you want it to do, like write an article, write a blog, you know, create a press release, you name it, it can do it. But tell it to try doing it just for fun, act as a stand-up comedian, right? So write an article on the, African, you know, that like we just did, but then if you tell it instead of acting as a membership professional, act as a stand-up comedian. In this example, I asked why people should get their CAE, their Certified Association Executive Certification. And, you know, it's a pretty funny result. I mean, but this is humor generated by computers. Like, I mean, it's cool and it's not bad, really. So another example, let's say if you work or are involved in human resources, your HR department, and you've got to, you know, you got to hire somebody. Right. Well, you go through this whole process, you got to kind of figure out what the job title is, what the description is, and, you know, and then things like, you know, where, you know, you want to, say you wanted to build a website to post the description online, right? You just tell it to, you know, part of the chain prompting, you've told it to, you know, find a job description. You're going to ask it what it needs to know. It's going to ask you a bunch of questions. You tell it, you give it the answers. You're going to ask it to create the job description. Once you've answered that, then you're going to ask it to post it or create the website. Then you're going to ask it for evaluation criteria, and, you know, and it will give you perhaps a scoring matrix. Right? And I've tried doing this, and it does that. So it will give you a scoring matrix with a ranking on that. And then the final thing is, well, let's say you've got 100 resumes and you've got to go through them all. Well, ChatGPT can't look into your computer, but what you can do is ask him to write some code in Python or whatever else you want, just code that you can run on your computer that will then, the goal of the code is to look at in a specific folder in your Google Drive or in your local computer, and you give it the name of the drive, the specific location, look in there, find all the documents that each one is a resume, process all the documents, analyze them, use a scoring matrix that has already been created, and then rank and score them all, right? Now, that's a complex piece of code, but it will do it all for you. So just as an example, how you can go from soup to nuts, like right from the beginning through the whole process, and use AI as a way in which to help what would ordinarily take a lot of time to do and resources. So in my own case, just as a recent example, I'm like, all right, so Insightguide's a new company. I've been working on it for a couple of years, building the platform out and whatnot. But I needed to launch a company, and this was a couple of months ago. And, you know, I went to a marketing agency and I'm like, all right, I got to launch a company. Can you come up with a proposal? And the proposal was about 20 grand. I'm like, whoa, I'm like, you know, I'm a bootstrapped, you know, one person company. I'm not going to pay 20 grand for that. I'm like, forget it. So of course I looked for a better option for me. I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't worth it, but for me, it was out of my budget range. So I, of course, went to ChatGPT and said, all right, create a press release. Or first of all, I asked it, hey, I'm launching a new company. What do I need? And it gave me a whole bunch of suggestions. I'm like, great. And with each one of them, I'm like, all right, so create me the press release. I already have a website, so that was fine, but I need some content for the website. You know, again, going through a dialogue, a discussion. And then I managed to get a couple of quotes. So I told it to include those quotes in certain areas. One was from Reggie Henry, AfSAE's CTO. And then I said, hey, I want a LinkedIn post, a tweet, and you know, after that, I was like, and I want a couple of articles as well. So write an article on this. And then And then finally, I was like, I want a video on the website of people talking about the software. And so that's where I start, in a few of these cases, I start using different AI tools for, to bring these pieces together. And in this case, when and I'm hoping you'll be able to kind of see it, but I've put links to the blogs that, in the articles that I posted that resulted from starting off with ChatGPT. One thing I will say though, my process, I have an idea for an article. I ask ChatGPT to write an article. It will give it to me. Then I'll copy it and paste it in Grammarly.com, whatever it is, Grammarly. So paste it in there, and then essentially I rewrite most of the article. Right? I don't have to, but I just want it to be in my own voice, my own tone. But from a process perspective, if I had to just write the article from scratch, just getting started is like 9/10 of the work. Right, and if you could just have it started for you, and then you just editing and tweaking it, it's way, for me, it's just way easier, and I can hammer that stuff out pretty quickly. So then I wanted a presentation as well on the company and the launch of the company. I wanted a video, as I mentioned, but in the video, I wanted 4 different people, 4 personas, talking about different perspectives: the supplier, the association exec, and the member, and then somebody from Insightguide. And I'll show you how that worked out in a minute. But the also, when I did a Zoom recording, I used Chorus AI to record it and actually provide AI-driven feedback on what it can do to improve the the presentation, or let's say I'm doing a sales demo, or you're talking to a membership prospect, and you're trying to really demonstrate the value of your association. Well, it may be that by using Chorus or Gong is another one, G-O-N-G, Gong. But using one of those just as an example, a couple of examples, it might tell you, hey, you didn't have eye contact 40% of the time. You could improve your close rate by X amount by having more eye contact, or things like that. Here is another tool I use, tome.app, tome.app. This is a really cool AI tool where you put in a prompt. It's free. Put in a prompt. I put in the value of an online community manager, and in 10 seconds it created me, and I put a link to it, 8 slides with custom unique art embedded throughout, and the content was really good. So if you need to create a presentation for anything, just play around with it. Go to tome.app, type in whatever it is, hit enter, and within like 10 seconds or so, you'll get a complete presentation. You may or may not want to use it, but it's fun to do anyway. DALL-E, many of you have probably heard of this. It's a great art generation tool. And in this case, I entered a prompt, hey, I want an impressionist painting depicting a diverse group of engaged members of an association. The result was the 4 images you can see there, right? Beautiful, like this is great art. Well, art's subjective, right? Maybe my 6-year-old drew them, or maybe it's a Picasso, who knows, right? But it's free to mess around with. You can, they give you a limit on the free version, obviously, but play with it. This is kind of one of my favorites, and I don't know if you'll be able to hear this. Nicanor, tell me if you can hear the volume on that. Did you hear any talking?
No.
No. Okay. Maybe if I don't know if this will work, but let's give it a try. Just going to share the website. And then, hang on one second. All right. So
is one of the most valuable member benefits my association offers. A marketplace solution allows me to very quickly find any company, product, or service and quickly identify the best solution for my needs.
In summary, by using the Insightguide business marketplace.
All right, I won't bore you with the whole thing, but hopefully you kind of got the gist. And if you hadn't guessed, the that whole thing is synthetic, right? Like that was not real people; it was synthetic avatars. And that I used an app, a tool called Synthesia.io. And again, I think for that I signed up $20 a month. I used it to create this video. It downloaded it, then I canceled my subscription because I only needed to do that one thing. So for $20, I got that 4-person video, and it helped project the values of the company with respect to diversity and inclusion. And so that's why the characters were chosen, based on being a diverse set of characters. So, but again, you can imagine this is part of my launch plan to put it on the website. And within a couple of hours max, I had this nice video with the graphics and the art and everything else all kind of embedded within it. So we're coming up on the top of the hour, so I want to leave some time for just a bit of a discussion. But I just want to highlight, I put a list of other useful AI tools that I use. The Bing, if you open the Edge browser, go to Bing, you'll see now there's a new option for the AI version, right? And you'll get the normal search results, but in the right side, you'll actually get the AI results. Bard Google's coming up with one called Bard, which is slowly being released. And then Midjourney, it's a bit like DALL-E in terms of it generates art. The 2 owls you see on this page, those were generated from Midjourney, and but it's high definition art. And of course, when I first started seeing this a year or so ago, and I'm like, whoa, I'm like, that's really cool, but like which photo collection are they pulling this stuff from? And then it was slowly explained, no, this is just creating brand new unique art on the fly. And so, from my understanding is from a copyright perspective that there is not. Like you've created it, you can use it. You're not paying for digital rights or anything like that. It's just part of your subscription. It is possible that what it creates might be very similar to something that's already out there, but that's true in any case. So keep that in mind. Adobe's just created a new thing called Firefly, which is for more digital editing and things like that, but it's insanely powerful. There's a cool video demonstration if you go to the website, excuse me. If you want a new logo for your annual conference, for next year's conference, maybe go to imageai.app and it will just generate a cool logo for you based on a prompt. I recently needed to convert a lot of SVG files, which are image files, over to JPG, different type of image. Found a vectorizer.ai that allows me to do either convert it to SVG or the other way around. Just drag a whole bunch in the homepage, download a zip file of the results really easily. If you have photos, that you need the background removing. Say you've got a screenshot of my face, but you need all this weird background. It's not a solid color. There's tools that will use AI to do that, to get it to do a much better job than what you could do otherwise. And then there's Descript.com is a pretty cool one. If you take the recording of this video, and let's say I'm close to the camera, you can see my eyes, and I got different locations here, but and a lot of the time, say the video is really good, but a few of the times I'm looking over there, and you want to edit that out without cutting any of the video. So you can use things like Descript.com that will you load the video, you tell it you want the eye things fixed, so I'm not looking over there, and it will fix it for you and just give you the video where it's the exact same video, nothing's cut out of it except I'm no longer moving my eyes. Similarly, I say a lot, and you want to cut that out, well, you just tell it remove and you won't, you know, it'll cut it out, but you won't notice. It's really, really cool stuff. And finally, if that isn't enough, there is, of course, on our website called there's an AI for that. And there, and it's literally there's an AI for that.com. And there's a few other ones similar to that, like futuretools.io. And it's really a place where you can go and find all AIs, right? Like, or many of the AIs. You do a search for, you know, photo manipulation or press or communications or marketing or whatever, and it would just give you everyone that's related to that field. Agent GPT is a new one that's emerging. The core, it's not quite there yet, but it's pretty interesting just to mess around with. You tell it to you give it a job to do, like, hey, what's the quickest way to make money? Right? It will go and, like a broad task like that, it will go out, try and find, like, come up with something, but then it will show you kind of what it's doing as it's doing it, but then it will self-analyze and self-critique and go back and try and do it better. And you can see all the steps. Oh, and I missed one tip earlier when you're using ChatGPT, especially if you're asking it something with like scientific or engineering or math or whatever. When it gives you it gives you the results, ask it to walk you through step by step the results. Give me step by step results and explain the process. And sometimes that can be useful depending on what the task is to help you understand what it's doing and why. Yeah, math is a good example, right? Like, you give it a complicated formula, it gives you the answer, but it doesn't explain, like, doesn't teach you how it works. There's a bunch of really cool, interesting prompts out there that you can use as well. Like, one is you want to learn a foreign language, right? Well, there's prompts where you can just use ChatGPT to teach you a new language. And again, I won't kind of go into these now, but you can use it for things like that as well. Here's a nice chart that I found. I don't remember where from, unfortunately, but it's just a bunch of AI tools grouped by category. Okay, so it's interesting. And that kind of brings us to the end. You know, in summary, AI will change everything we do. Sadly, while I've been talking, this session's already out of date because it's moving that fast. You know, as associations, we have the opportunity to excel and, you know, do more with less. And so, you know, I guess I want to leave you with a parting question. Imagine yourself 10 years from now looking back on the beginning of what is the beginning of this new revolution of technology. And that's exactly what it is. And just, you know, you'll see it. If you don't see it already, you'll see it soon enough. And ask yourself the question, do you want to be the association exec who resisted change and didn't adapt? Or do you want to be the one who embraced change and learned to be exponentially more productive by leveraging AI? And I'm assuming most of you would fall into category B. And if you do, the next question to ask yourself is how do you bring along your association as well, right? Because if you're ready to go with option B, you're ready to embrace it and be more productive and everything else, but you also want the association to leverage the benefits of this. And how does the association do that? So it's just, you know, it's food for thought, right? Change is difficult, and, you know, it's something that you know, we're all going to have to embrace. And yes, there will be disruptions in terms of workplace. People, you know, some people will lose their jobs. Other people will have new jobs, or they'll just become happier because they're doing things that are more productive or make use of their time better. For example, you could have AI generate a lot of and do a lot of the things, the more mundane things you don't like doing, and then you're able to do more of the better things that you do like doing, right? As an example, somebody asked me recently, like, of an example of a new position that might evolve, you know, might emerge from AI, and the number one thing I keep hitting home about is AI ops, right? AI operations. It is a new role, but think of that role as the person who is going to help the organization transition through an AI revolution, right? And so, you know, my suggestion, if you're the CEO of an association and you've got some employees, you know, if not all of them, depending on the size of them, let's say you got 50 employees, right? 5 different departments. Just take one person from each department, agree to pay their $20 a month, and tell them they're part of the new task force, focused on how to leverage AI. And every week, their job is to get together, share how each of them have leveraged AI to be more productive, and then write a summary to share with the rest of the staff. Right, that's just an example of how you might be able to bring other people along on this journey to the point where everybody kind of gets what can be done with AI and has the opportunity to utilize it. Doesn't mean they're going to utilize it, but they can. So with that being said, we're kind of at the end. We do have some time for questions, and I'm happy to just, if you want me to try and use ChatGPT to solve some tasks, just hit me up. So we have a question from Jackie. She said, you missed what I said about Google's Bard AI and how it compares with ChatGPT. Bard is still more of a search engine, right? So ChatGPT is that more conversational experience. So, and Bard has only started being rolled out. I'm not sure it's rolled out to everybody yet, but let me just share my browser. So bard.google.com, and then I'm going to copy the question on my other screen. I'm going to copy the question that I put into ChatGPT earlier, just to kind of see how it does. All right, sure. Here are 5 bullet points on what the article will be about, blah, blah, blah. And wow, that was fast, right? So again, you got to kind of play around with this. I'm going to give it a thumbs up on that one. Rewrite the article with more detail for each bullet and cite sources. Oh, spelled wrong, but I'm just kind of making this up, but I'm designed solely to process and generate text. I'm unable to assist you with that, okay? Now, I don't know if ChatGPT would actually be any better in this example, but we can try it. This is the original question. I'm going to edit the response where I said, just give me the bullets. I'm just going to say, rewrite it, blah, blah, blah. It might actually say the same because of the citing source. Oh no, it's actually done it. Oh, sorry, I forgot. I'm not sharing the other screen. Let me share my ChatGPT. There we go. So it said rewrite the article and cite sources. So it's done it. It's saying source 2, etc., source 4, and then it's actually cited the sources. Now, whether these sources are valid, remember, it might be hallucinating. I would definitely just click on it and check. And remember, this is from an archive of 2021. So yeah, I've just clicked on a couple of them and neither of them are found. I think that maybe it was hallucinating when it came up with the sources. Association trends. Yeah, I think he just made it all up. That's a great example of hallucinations. So just be careful with that. All right, we've got another question. Jackie, I hope that answered your question. Feel free to just come off mute as well if you'd like. I have about 10 more minutes, so I'm good for a moment, for a little while. From Jeffers, do you share the concerns raised by top executives AI is a threat to humanity? I mean, it's funny. It can definitely be a threat for sure. Is it going to be Skynet? I mean, time will tell. Certainly, I think we all hope not. I think more realistically, I mean, if you were to use AI and say, all right, now we want to put this AI in charge of when the nuclear missiles can launch, then absolutely it's a threat to humanity. And so it's not necessarily about, in my opinion, about AI being a threat. It's about it's about humans making decisions, like just really poor decisions based on an overconfidence in what they think AI can do. Do I think AI will become sentient and start, doing its own things? Well, it's already has emerging capabilities. It's teaching itself and it's evolving, but it's still based on a bunch of code, right? And it's not, and also when right now, ChatGPT, it's got a bunch of safety protocols built into it. Yes, you could do the same thing without the safety protocols, but it's a bit of a stretch to say it's going to end up doing whatever else. But the fact is, there are nefarious characters out there, and people will try to abuse this stuff and do things that you shouldn't be doing. We've already seen examples of AIs that can imitate voice. I don't know if you saw Drake. The music from Drake that came out on Spotify went viral. Works out it wasn't Drake. An AI had taken, because the prompt engineer had told the particular AI to take a few seconds of Drake's voice, and then it used ChatGPT or whatever to create a new song in the style of Drake, and then use the other AI to say, all right, now sing this song. Here's the song that ChatGPT created. Use that in Drake's voice, right? And then they took that, put it up to Spotify, and release it as a new Drake song, which he knew nothing about. And so take that. Think about, somebody calls your kids, cell phone. Your kid answers. You get them speaking for a few seconds. You've got the recorded voice. You upload that. Turn that into a scam bot that will call the parents asking for money because from your kid's in trouble, and so it's your kid calling your parent or a relative because it's their voice, but it's AI driven, right? I mean, there's horrible things that could be done with it, that were, it's inevitable. Unfortunately, we can't really stop it, but we're just gonna have to be really aware and sensitive. But unfortunately, there's going to be bad uses of it. I don't think it will turn into a Skynet situation, but I think that it does have potential for harm. But I think from the association perspective, there's a huge amount of potential for good, especially when you think about the medical, the scientific organizations, engineering organizations, and the exponential advancements in those industries that can be made by leveraging fine-tuned and other types of AIs built for your association. Probably way more of an answer than you needed, but it's as I'm sure you guess, it's not a simple yes or no.
Andy,
all right,
I also have a question.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for the presentation and just sharing the opportunities that are available. My question is simple. I went to BAD, I think the Google platform. I was just trying to prepare a paper, and I asked BAD to share with me my competitors in the market. And in this case, I was looking for the competition of the African Society of Association Executives, and asked, sort of like give me some comparative advantages, how much they charge in terms of their revenues. And I was shocked. This thing generated an organization that doesn't exist, complete with founders and where it is based, and a website, and fees, membership subscription fees that were literally fake. And I asked myself, fine, this is AI that is using, information or sources of data that have been, fed on it. Where do they get this? Because it poses such a huge risk, in terms of not only just misleading, but also putting you in trouble and wasting your time, So I spent quite a lot of time just trying to Google this and find out what are the sources of this information. So where does this AI get the sources, and how come they are able to completely fake situations and support those, situations with fake sources.
Yeah, and it's exactly what I showed earlier, where I asked it to cite the sources. It's what we call hallucinations, and it's not just ChatGPT. It's all of the AI engines, as far as I know, suffer from the same issue, and they're all trying to figure out a way around it. Which is, when it can't find the information that you want, it just makes up what it thinks is credible information. Right? It's trying to give you information that you want, but the fact is it's not real information. And this is why we have to be extra careful about, kind of trusting what it says, right? You've got to review what it gives you and then, check. And that article that I just had it create with the sources, that was ChatGPT. I tried 4 of those sources. They were all page not found, and I suspect they were just made up sources. But yet the links, one was to Association Trends, I think it was, right? They're credible websites, but I think it just doesn't exist. It's just made up. So you have to be kind of careful and using. Can you see my screen now? I think I've shared it. My Bard screen where I've said create a list of African associations, right? Just as an example. So here it's given me a list. Now I'm going to tell it recreate the list, but link the associations to their respective website. Right, and the reason is because it's just an easy way to all right, not able to help with that as I'm only a language model. Right, so this is one where perhaps I could try it on a different one, and in fact, if I do it with Bing, it'd be interesting to see kind of what that does. Let's just give that one a try. So ask me anything. And again, this is Bing.com, but I'm using the AI search. Right, create a list of African associations. All right, I'm going to tell it to stop responding. Add the URL for each association. All right, so now you can see it's like searching for African associations URL, right? But it's not doing it. Now, on the other hand, if I use ChatGPT, things like this, I would probably have much better response. And again, depending on which model I use, the 4 or the 3.5, the only downside is, of course, it's still limited to the like if I'm just going to use this same thread, create a list. All right, now I'm going to, oh, it actually already included the URL just as part of its list, right? But now when I just click on each of these, I'm curious whether it will take me to the correct site. And I imagine in some cases it will, in other cases it won't.
That one, correct. That one exists. I know of it.
Yeah. So, but you get the idea, right? I mean, it's definitely a flaw of it. So there's not perfection, but this stuff has only been out for like a year. So imagine it's this good already. Think of just using it for things that it's pretty good at, such as creating content. If you're going to ask it to cite sources, then you're going to have to really look at that to be sure, but often you won't need that if it's just creating unique content for you. So anybody else have any other questions or want to hop on the mic?
Any question before we wind this up? Any question? Anyone with a question? We are a small team, so
I think I want to commend Andy for that wonderful presentation. I'm a keen tech enthusiast, and sometimes I'm excited whenever I see what's happening in the tech industry. But really, this is a well-researched presentation, Andy, and we look forward probably to engaging you more into the future to give us much more information about this tech space. I think you and I have met before in your work at at Higher Logic. I think we met before. So
Yeah, okay. The name rang a bell. I was like, really? Somebody? Okay, yeah. How you doing?
Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Sadly, I've not really been to spend much time in Africa. I've only been to like East Africa. I went to Niger years ago, but that's it. So I'm dying to come out and take the family out. So one day I'll get over there. But
yeah, thank you.
okay, yeah, my pleasure. Thank you all. And I'm going to kind of break off now because I have another call anyway. But you have all my email. You should all have my email address. Nick can always send it around with the slides, which I'll send him today. And if you have any questions, just hit me up. I'm happy to kind of just chat offline or whatever. So, all right. With that being said, enjoy your evenings, since it's evening there, it's morning here. But and have a great day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. Thank you all. And just for the rest of the members, hope we can catch you again next month with another insightful webinar. And again, just a quick reminder that we are planning for our annual summit in Johannesburg, South Africa. We have details online, but if you need any details regarding participation in that particular summit, please write to me. And I'll give my email again on the chat box. Write to me and I'll be able to share with you details around that annual summit that we are hosting in South Africa in September. Looking forward to seeing all of you there. Thank you very much, and catch you again next month when we have another insightful session. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Nikano.